School districts using the 4-day work week will likely need to make some changes as the House completes work on a bill to require a certain amount of time in the classroom. While some lawmakers are concerned about the impact on schools, the bill's supporters feel it provides more accountability.
Senate Bill 441 would require school districts to show they're performing up to standards if they choose to use a 4-day week. This legislation has been winding its way through the legislature since early in the session. It finally hit the House floor in its final version. Representative John Pfeiffer presented the bill.
This is Senate Bill 441 that mandates a 165-day school year. Happy to answer any questions.
And the questions flooded in. The first query concerned how public schools could get a waiver to remain on a 4-day work week and how often schools would need to apply.
I believe it's going to be reevaluated every 3 years. That's what I understand.
Former teacher Representative Jacob Rosecrans indicated he had been convinced that some schools should be allowed to have 4-day school weeks.
Would it surprise you to know that although I came out against the 4-day school week at first down in Noble, which I do represent, after speaking to many parents, it became a very popular thing down there. Would you be surprised to hear that?
It didn't surprise Pfeiffer. However, he says Senate Bill 441 would allow schools to keep the format, but would need to make sure the classroom instructional time requirements were met.
I have a 4-day school week in my district, which has a current academic calendar of 157 days. They would have to add 1 day. They would still be able to have a 4-day school week. They would have to add 1 instructional day.
Rosecrans highlighted his point that 4-day weeks are popular in some communities with a poll which indicates parents want to keep the calendar decisions on the local level.
83.61% of parents whose children are on a 4-day week were very satisfied with the 4-day week schedule. So to me, it looks like parents, and it's their choice, that this is a good thing for their districts. Would that surprise you?
Pfeiffer said the bill doesn't take away the 4-day week options from schools. It only requires districts to meet the classroom time requirements.
Again, they would still be able to have this. They would just have to have they'd have to go to school 165 days, 158 instructional days, plus the added parent-teacher conference and professional days.
If the measure becomes law, schools will still have a couple of years before they have to comply or apply for a waiver.
The State Department of Education is going to develop these rules, that we're going to vote on these rules next year. They have a full year to then apply for the waiver before they set their school calendars. They can still have a 4-day school week, as evidenced by the school in my district. If their students are succeeding, if their school's succeeding, they will get granted a waiver.
Representative John Waldron contends during questioning that requiring schools to show they can perform up to standards using a 4-day week is putting an undue burden on them.
If these districts demonstrate that they're already succeeding, why should we force them to go through a process dictated by the State Department of Education, a process we haven't even worked out yet, to fix something that from their perspective ain't broke?
Pfeiffer disagrees that oversight for schools is an undue burden.
I don't think holding schools accountable and making sure that we are educating our students is putting an onerous burden on them. That's why we have all sorts of safeguards to make sure that every student across the state is provided with a good quality education.
Representative Trish Ranson wondered what the cost would be to the school districts which are using the 4-day week, having to move to a longer school year to keep the weekly format.
Would these districts that are required to go longer or a longer school year, more days, would their apportionment reflect that? Or would their apportionment be the same as it would have been otherwise?
Pfeiffer noted that school funding is tied to enrollment, not time of instruction.
Thank you for that question. Their apportionment would still be the way it is through the funding formula. It would still be distributed per student, not per days.
Just before debate was to begin on Senate Bill 441, House Floor Leader John Echols made a procedural move.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We had discussed this beforehand because we had already gone so long in this bill. I move the previous question.
Members, the previous question has been moved. The question is, shall the House cease debate and vote immediately on the pending question? The clerk will activate the machine for a recorded vote.
The vote, which is pretty much down party lines, ended the chance for debate, putting the bill immediately up for a vote. The House sent Senate Bill 441 to the governor.